Welcome back to Beauty Marks Podcast. My name is Elizabeth Savion, and on today's episode, we are going to be covering a very important topic about domestic violence. This person talking on the podcast today, Bethzaida Garcia, is a victim advocate and has over 20 years experience helping others as well as herself that she was actually a victim. We're going to be talking about the red flags, the grieving process, the support system, and then also helps and resources if you are in one of the situations like this. So let's just get right into it. So today I have Bethzaida Garcia with me, and she is a domestic violence advocate. She works in the county doing self-defense classes, just really bringing awareness to this whole topic. And I feel like especially how this is the month of domestic violence awareness, I thought it would be perfect to have her to speak about it more and tell her story. So thank you so much for joining me, Bethzaida. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for accepting the invitation. So can you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, what you're passionate about?
I'm a domestic violence victim advocate. I've been doing this for the last 20 years. The way I started with this, I'm a survivor myself. And in my experience, when I came to Florida, just a little bit of information in Spanish. And I got put in my heart to do something different, like to start translating or giving this message in Spanish. It was a challenge because back then there was just a few newspapers in Spanish and few radio stations, and to disseminate the message, it was kind of like difficult because it was kind of like a closed environment. So just a few people had access to it. And God, He works in mysterious ways. It took me, I'll say that I have the blessing of meeting wonderful people. I remember one of them was the director of a newspaper that is well known in Puerto Rico. It's called El Nuevo Día, A New Day. And when I went there, I asked for just an article regarding domestic violence. And the person, we had an event at the church. We planned an event, coordinated an event for domestic violence, for shelter, for domestic violence survivors. And we were doing this beautiful fashion show for them, offering them an extreme makeover. We were doing hair, makeup, and all that. And we wanted to share some of that, keeping the confidentiality of the victims, the survivors. And then they couldn't send anyone from the newspaper to cover the story. And I wrote it. The lady told me, just write me a brief story, and we publish. And that was the beginning of everything, because I never had any experience as a journalist or anything like that. And when she read what I wrote, she said, oh my God, I want more of you. Please, you need to send me more stories, just cover everything you have in the community. And that's how we started. From there, radio, and we started disseminating it was valuable information. There was just a few people that were involved in the advocacy of domestic violence, Hispanics that speak the language in the different shelters. But one thing I realized that it was at the church that we needed to be. Mm-hmm. It was difficult to get to the churches, send this message, and it was kind of like a taboo at the church. Like, people didn't want to talk about it. And just starting the conversation, that's what we did. We started the conversation. We had pastors involved, Pastor Nino Gonzalez from Calvario City Church. We started that, and we started a ministry, a church, and it took like a couple of months, and it became like well known in the community. We got the attention of elected officials. We were able to broadcast in the public channel, Orange TV, mm-hmm. the program that we did at the church. And it's been kind of like, just for that experience that I have as a survivor, how God put in my heart to create this nonprofit, and from being obedient and just follow whatever he said. Just, I want you there. And I'm like, no, I don't know. I don't know the language. I don't want to talk to that people. I don't know how to write. I don't know this. And then he said, no, you're going to do it.
Yeah.
And that, and it was just him guiding me all the way through, and seeing his hand just like, hey, I brought you here and I'm going to provide you. And that's what he did. And that's like from that day when I came as a survivor, escaping from my life with my daughter, I'll say that I experienced everything: physical, mentally, kind of like all the type of spectrum of abuse, and had to come here, live in a shelter, hide for a time. Also, kind of like meet some other survivors. I didn't know that there were men that was suffering domestic violence. I thought it was just females. And when I went to the shelter, I was just trying to hide for a couple of months. And I went there and I met this guy with 5 kids. And I'm like, how in the world? You know, we tend to think that this is just females,
Yeah.
girls that suffer that. And I was only 26. And it's been quite an experience how God from that moment, and it's just, God has been good. That's all
Yeah.
I can.
No, that's amazing. Hearing how like God used your biggest part of your life, like a very difficult part of your life, to now help and to bless and inform other people. Like that's amazing. And that's what God does. I feel like he takes us out of the stuff that we always say, like, no, I would never do that. Like how you said, you were like, how am I going to talk to everyone? I don't even know how to write. Like God provides and equips us for those times. So, can you go more into like your story of how you, even because you said that you were a victim of domestic violence and that created even a bigger passion to help others. So, can you tell a little bit about your story?
Okay, I, like every like teenager, I got in love with the wrong person. It was like, okay, my parents wanted something for me, and you go the other way and you ignore what they say. And
Yes.
it was kind of like, okay, challenging your parents. And I remember meeting this person, and he was charming, or the most wonderful, and looking good. And that's how you get involved, because that sweet talk, things that you never had or never heard, and you get so easily like attracted to this type of people. And the other thing is, I always say that when you don't know your purpose, when you're young and you're looking for to be part of something, you want to belong to something, and someone offer you like, oh, you belong to this group of friends and all that, and you feel part of it, that's when you lose track. And that's when you start seeing the other way, not the way that God wants you to see. And that's what attracted me to this person. And since the beginning, there were some red flags. He never had that father figure. Mom wasn't there either. And I'm not justifying anything,
Mm.
but there are red flags. It was very impulsive, and in under a crisis, tension, the reaction was like just simple. Like, imagine you're driving and that person, you're sitting, you're a passenger, and this person is cutting the other people, cursing at others. That's just a big red flag.
Mhm.
That means that that's how we're going to deal when he's under stress. The other thing you can tell, I always tell people, like, you know what, you have to push them to the edge and see how they react, because you won't know a person until you really go through a crisis, like something that happened, an issue, disagreement. And because keeping it like, oh, nice, all sweet, and smell the roses, and
Mm.
this is so perfect, you won't know if that person really can handle a big issue how it's going to react. And sometimes I tell the girls, like, just písale los callos. I don't know how to
Yeah, like
translate.
it's like you have to pinch a nerve. Like you have to like really, really get on their nerves to really make sure that how they're gonna react.
And people make the girls like, no. I say, you have to create a crisis.
Oh my gosh.
How he's going to react. If not, he's going to show you the best of him.
Mhm.
He's gonna make things up. He's gonna look always nice and perfect, and you won't know. So that's how I kind of like started, and also that self-esteem. You really have to work your self-esteem, because when you go through things in your child, when you're growing up, and you're like you lack different things at home, you tend to look for that out there. And that's so wrong. That's why we have to start when our girls are young, our boys are young, so we can teach them to value themselves, how important they are, they're God's creation, so we can start building that, and they don't fall from for this type of relationships. And that's, I think that those were the two main things for me. I'll say my self-esteem wasn't in the right place, so I believe whatever he said, and I fall for it, like because I never heard anything better than that. I
Mhm.
never experienced anything better than that. So when you lack those things, whoever reach out, you will believe, and you will think that's, oh, he's Superman. And those are things that I learned, and from there the relationship started like months after first beat up. And physically, I'll say that in one of those, he fractured my nose. And I remember bleeding and bleeding and bleeding. And I couldn't understand how someone that loves you can hurt you so badly, emotionally, physically. And from there, with a broomstick hitting my back. And I didn't know better. And that's when you realize that things need to change,
Mhm.
and you're given opportunities after another. That's what we call the cycle, because it's kind of like a honeymoon first, and after that it's the increase of if he curse, he start cursing more, and it's increased. It's like a
Mhm.
crescendo in music. It's just go up, 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 and then you go. That's how it works. And after that, you see the aggression. In some cases, you don't get to that part. He just is the verbal and the emotional abuse. And but when you go back, he comes back, and he asks for forgiveness. He cry. He give you the roses, and all the those perfect things that you thought, well, they're not bad all the time,
Mhm.
because he wasn't mean all the time. He wasn't abusive all the time. It was fun to be around him. We had a great time most of the time. But when those incidents happen, he was completely a different person. If you're gonna marry that person, you get it like forever, and it's difficult. And that's what happened. Like for me, knowing that I was in an abusive relation, I didn't know back then what was an abusive relationship. And to define it, to kind of like get to know those red flags. I'm like, red flags? Yeah, no. Like this type of thing. If they abuse their pets, like
Mhm.
if you have pets, or they have pets, and you know that they're kind of like abuse them, doesn't feed them, kick them, that's just the first red flag. If you
Mhm.
love, animals, if you're an animal lover, like
Yeah,
you
like
take.
most people, you're like, yeah, they treat them how they're probably gonna treat other things.
Yeah, and same thing if you see how they treat their mothers, their relationship they have with mom, or with the siblings. Like check how they treat their sisters, and that's important too, because you can tell if you know that sisters say, "Oh, he." beat me up all the time. And we were kid. He was very aggressive, like no respect to females. That's how you're gonna know. Like that's the beginning. Imagine he wouldn't change that because of you or because you're beautiful. Like oh, you're the most awesome person in the world. No, 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 no.
Mm-hmm.
You see it. That pattern is a pattern of abuse, and you'll see it all the way. It's a cycle. And for me to get out of that relationship after getting married, having my daughter, there was an incident that triggers me to leave the relationship, for me to leave the relationship. And it was that he was so abusive to me physically. And then he went after my daughter, after our daughter.
Wow.
And that was what made me take that final decision and triggers me to leave the relationship. Because I say you can hit me, hurt me, and I was already in that tolerance, like I didn't care. You've done it to me so many times. I was accustomed to it.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's to your kids, and I was, 20 something only, that's when you realize, like, oh no, he gonna or kill me or kill her, and I have to escape. And that's how I got from Puerto Rico to the United States, to Florida.
Wow. So you're
I
fleeing.
I decided, I'm like, I want to leave. And it was like, there was a moment, like I say, God, I remember him like holding my face, like in his hand, completely my face and my forehead, and beating me and pushing me to the walls. And in Puerto Rico, the walls are cement, like
Mm-hmm.
concrete. And my head, I remember having a lot of concussions in my head and bruises on my back and my arms, everywhere. And that moment, I was kind of like numb. Like I say, Lord, and I started praying. I say, Lord, if you let me leave this relationship, if you let me escape alive, I will definitely leave Puerto Rico and leave him, and I'll serve you and do whatever you want me to do. And
Mm-hmm.
that was kind of my promise. And I say, and I've done it since then.
Wow.
It's been quite a journey, because when I came here, I didn't know the language. I still doesn't know I sometimes I'm Spanish, English. What am I talking about?
No,
Like,
you sound great.
and I'm like
Mhm.
this strong accent with flavor and sabor, boricua, and but it's something that I learned how to accept myself, love myself, and believe in myself. And it took me years to understand that. It took me, this is an up and down. Like today, you're like, whoa, 100% spiritual, but there are days that you're 20%, and you're like looking for that, like, God, talk to me, speak to me. I need you. It's kind of like
Mhm.
that search. You're always in that search with that relationship with God. There will be days that you feel completely like a failure, like, oh
Mhm.
God, I'm a sinner. I did this and that, and you're not perfect. But God doesn't look that. He's just he's looking, I guess, our heart
Mhm.
for us to obey. He knows our flaws and weaknesses, and he will work through that and make us who he wants us to be. And I kind of like I always I have few songs that I refer to. I don't
Mhm.
know if you for King and Country, there is a song that say God only knows,
Yes.
because he's the only one who really knows you, what you're going through.
Mhm.
And when it's about relationships, it's so complicated. It's so complicated because that's like you know that God is there, but you're the one who's gonna pick. Like,
Mhm.
and you're there, you're out there. It's kind of like a big world, and there's so many voices that you're hearing. And it's difficult. It's complicated and difficult. But at the end, with my experience, what I learned is just what I say, to love myself, believe in myself, and just trust God and obey. And because He's the only one who knows. And nobody can tell you, nobody can judge you, nobody can say anything about you because they're not being in your shoes. It's God. He's been the one who's been with you throughout the process.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen. That's so good. Getting out of the relationship and you learning from your experiences, because that's pretty much what you're saying. Like you went through that and you had made the choice, but it didn't define how the rest of your future, went. Like now you are doing so many other things. But I wanted to go back to the story of, did you have support or did you have people around you that were seeing those things or that you had as a support during those times, or were you more to yourself while you were going through that?
My network was my family, my parents, my sisters. I have friends. And this is the thing, you're so blind that you don't see because you are supposedly in love. But I learned that love, when someone really loves you and you're in love, that it's reciprocal. Like
Mhm.
that person comes back, and it's about respect and love. If there's no respect, that's not such a love. Like, you can love me if you're hurting me. That's not love. That's what I learned. And with my support network, I'll say my parents, and this is the thing, your parents become kind of like an ally or an enemy when you're in a relationship,
Mhm.
because whatever they say, sometimes you take it like, no, that's just them because they want me to do whatever they want me to
Mhm.
do. And for you, it's kind of like you have this battle, internal battle. Like, they're saying the right thing, but you still want to do it your way. You want to keep going with the relationship, even though it's really, you're disappointed and you think that that's not the best for you. You can get better than that. And that's, but at the end, it's kind of like that voice. When you hear your friends like, oh, he doesn't deserve you, he's an abuser, he's
Mhm.
this and that and that. You think about that. It's just when you're in relationships like that, it's kind of like it's a cycle. For you to break that, it takes more than just words. People can tell you things like, oh no, it's not good for you and all that, but you are the one who needs to make that decision. People can come to you. I remember one of my sister, if you don't leave here, I won't talk to you. And I'm like, yep, don't talk.
Okay.
I don't care. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm like, yep, so what? And but it's when you finally, like what I say, what triggers me, it was that incident. It has to be you.
Mhm.
You do listen to those voices, that the people that comes to you and they talk to you, but at the end, it's your decision. If you take that decision trying to please someone else, you're gonna go back. Because it took me, I'll say 20 times, 30 times, like that I left, went back, I went back, I left him, went back, and it's a back and forth. It's an on and, kind of like
Mhm.
we're going back and forth in the relationship. But it's in reality when you internalize, like, hey, my sister, she's been mad, my dad, everybody's against me. Is the
Mhm.
world against me? How is the world impossible? Why everyone thinks the same way and I'm the only one who's pursuing this when it's hurting me? And only in that moment, I couldn't imagine my life without God throughout the process.
Mhm.
I probably would have go back to the person because I guess God had all this plan for me. Look at me, I'm talking to you right now, like
Mm-hmm.
stay there or I'll be dead right now.
Wow.
And but it's definitely you need your family and that network, because even though at that moment you're like doing your own thing, you're gonna go back and kind of like one day you understand like they were not doing it just because they want to bother me. They were doing it because they love me, they really care about me, and they wanted the best for me. And yeah, that's what I'll say about that.
Yeah, no, I think it's very important because other people outside of the relationship will always see things that we don't. And that's how you said, like, I know myself, even in the past, like being with people that people are like, why are you with them? Like, what do you see in them? You know, and then like you, because you're in it, you're like, I love them. This is the person for me. So it's very true. We get blinded. So how is your recovery, your healing once you escape? Like how was that journey for you, and what do you feel like was the hardest and the best part of that new life that you lived here?
I will say everyone has their own struggles, and everyone will be different. But one thing we have in common, we'll all suffer like that grieving is like it's the same process of losing someone. When someone passed, the same steps that you go through, like denial, this is not happening to me. Impossible. How in the world I let this happen to me? And you go to that other step, like stage, like anger, and that you just want like, "Rah, if I see him, smack him." Like, how in the world I let that happen to me? I'll have a baseball bat next to me, and next time I will. And you say all those things, and you have
Mhm.
that internal conversation, and is that struggle with grieving the loss, like of someone that for you was the only person, like also the it's like you're being taken from your environment. It's like a tree. You were planted somewhere and you abruptly was taken from that place and basically they threw you somewhere new that you don't even know the language,
Mhm.
that you don't know anybody. And just you're a tree, your roots are like all over, and you have to go back and get like those roots back to fertile soil and start nurturing yourself so you can start flourishing again when you have nothing left, like spiritual, I'll say emotional, you're drained, like everything was like like take from you, took
Mhm.
it from, and starting all over. It was the biggest challenge, like not having family members around, trying to communicate, and you cannot say a word. Yeah, in Puerto Rico we learn English, but conversational, like,
Mhm.
oh boy. And that was the hardest part, like leaving the what you know
Mhm.
to the unknown. It's a completely, it's kind of like a monster. I'll call it.
Mhm.
It's your darkness, because you are like in a completely new place with the unknown. You don't know what's gonna happen, if you're gonna get a job, if you're gonna get your family, if you're gonna get to see them again, because they don't want to go back, because he's looking for you there, and he can kill you if you go back, and he can kill your family. Those are the thinking. You're thinking all that, And going through those dark nights, like the crying, like the nonstop for hours, and not having a private place to do it, like your own room, you're sharing rooms with other people. The only place that you can do it is in the bathroom because, like,
Yeah.
the only place I couldn't hide. And then when they knock the door, I'm like, I'm done crying. I'm done for today.
Oh.
And then you learn how to God brings wonderful people to your life that teach you, like, hey, there's timing for crying. Do you know that? Like, don't cry for some, you just put it in your watch. I'm going to cry today for an hour and set the alarm, and you're going to cry today only an hour. And then you go back, okay, 45 minutes today, 30 then tomorrow. And you start programming your brain and yourself. But that was the hardest, is the struggle of the separation, like from my island coming to Florida, or everything. And I'll say one of the happiest moments was when I was hired for a job. Like, it was only 2 months or 3 months. I'll say, yeah, the third month that I was here, I had my bachelor degree from Puerto Rico. And I went to this school and kind of like went to an interview. And this lady, she started speaking English. I understood everything she said. And then she looked at my resume and she said, oh, wow, impressive. Because, like, and she say, would you like to get this will be the easiest interview because you're hired. Are you okay with that? And I say, yes. That's the only thing I said in the
She didn't even know you didn't speak. Aww.
other word. And then there was the assistant next to her. And when she left to look for some papers, she said, do you know English? I say, a little bit. And she said, you don't know no English? Tú no sabes nada. And I'm like, but don't worry, you're hired, so you're going to learn it in the process. So that moment, I knew that was God in the process. Like, because how in the world an interview with no talking at all is just, you're hired. And the good thing is that what makes me feel like so joyful and all that, because I was working with special ed students. So their English, it was like basic English. So I started learning the language little by them. They never make fun of me. Like, because we were kind of like in a level, my English was kind of like basic, their English. So I learned from them. And I have wonderful teachers that were there. It was in a school, and I was an assistant teacher, and that's how it kind of started. And after that, like a year after, there was a position that opened in a high school, and they offered it to me, and I'm like, how in the world I'm gonna teach that class if my English is so like my accent and everything? I say, yeah, we need an English teacher like you. I'm like, what?
Oh my gosh.
English? I'm like, what in the world? And I remember when I took that position, I'm like, I definitely am crazy. Why? How I'm gonna do this? And even my students say, Miss, you don't even know English. Are you gonna teach me English?
Oh my gosh.
I'm like,
That's so funny.
high school. It was a high school, but they were special ed. They had challenges in English to pass FCAT. Back then was FCAT. And what I did with those kids, they even testify at the end that, Miss, you changed my life. Most of them passed the test. And even with but I knew the strategies, the techniques and all that, and I made them read aloud. And now I see them all the time. Oh, miss, thank you for helping me and all
Mhm.
that. So, and that's what God, that's why he did. And I'll say that the difficult part was that, but there was some other, I'll say, blessings in the way.
Of just taking the risk and just like leaving it to God. Because everything that you said is just like everything that you never thought that you would be doing. Like
Mm-hmm.
a door was open, an opportunity. Like in those moments, it was like reminding you, like this is the right choice. Like this is what you need to do, and this is why you're here. So, when it comes to now the awareness of the whole month, what are things that you resources or things that you teach to other people um, about domestic violence?
First, definitely the definition is a pattern. It's a behavior, it's a pattern. And it happens in a relationship. It can be between husband, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend. We have what is dating violence. And I teach the type of abuse. We're talking about the physical, emotional, sexual, spiritual, financial, all the things that entitle like isolation, verbal abuse, that I'm controlling. We use what is called the power and control wheel, and that teach you and shows you what is being under a relationship of power and control, and identifying those things. I love to teach that to support groups and when I go to shelters, because the thing is that sometimes you're in a relationship and you don't even know what they did to you was an abusive and controlling behavior. And you think that's just something normal. Just an example, phone calls. Like that person is calling you all the time. They follow you, or they show up at your work without even you like accept, like they just show up surprisingly, like, hey, I came here just to see how you're doing, like, and you see this constantly, like, and most of the time you think, oh, he's so charming, look at him, he's so cute, he came to work, he brought me flowers, and kind of like, but you see a pattern there because this person is all over your life, controlling texts, where are you, where you at, like all the time, but they do it in a subliminal way that you think that's, oh, they just love me, they're so cute, but in reality it's just trying to get to you, to get and control what you're doing, where you go, with who you meet. I don't like that friend of yours, she's crazy, she's this and that, and start criticizing your friends. But it's for you to kind of like avoid them and not get to them or spend time with them. And these are some red flags that, and things that I like to teach, because most of the time, like in a case, I have a survivor, and she say, no, he only used, I won't say what he used, but he hurt her physically. But she say, no, 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 he didn't go all the way. He just scratched me. And for me, I say, okay, go back. Say, repeat what you just said. And when she realized and she heard, because you talk, you don't realize, and when she repeated it, she say, oh my God, what am I saying? Like, I say, yes, meaning a little bit more, he could have killed you. So you're minimizing what he did, diminished, kind of like minimize, like you put it like, oh no, no, it was just, he just pushed me. And but when you add that and add more and more, you get to this whole cycle of violence. The other thing, the resources we have the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence. That's a national line. And in that line, people, it doesn't matter what the state they are, it's national. You can call the line. It's the 1-800-799-7233. You give your zip code, and they put you in contact with your local outreach, domestic violence outreach or shelter. And you get information in Spanish, English, and I think other languages too. And I think this is a number that we all should have in our phone saved, because you never know when one of your friends is going to talk about, oh, I'm dating this guy and this did this to me, and it's abuse. And probably you say it and they don't believe you and say, you know what, just call this number and you can get additional information if you need any help. And you did your part with it, just providing that number, the 1-800-799-7233.
Okay. And then also here locally in the county, you also do things, correct? Or there's places or shelters?
Yeah, there is at Osceola County, there is a shelter, and it's an outreach, and it's called HelpNow of Osceola. I'm part of their board. I'm a board member there. And what they do there is basically, I'll say that I live in that shelter, and now I'm a member. I'm a board member, executive, part of the executive board.
Wow, that's
And
amazing.
that's just God. Like that's how he does his things. And Help Now, the number there is 407-847-8562. 407-847-8562. But if you're like in Central Florida and in Florida, there is the Florida Coalition Against Domestic Violence, and that number is the 1-800-500-1119. And those are basically, if you're national, I gave the number already. State, Florida, is the 1-800-500-1119. And if you're in Osceola County, it's the Help Now number. And that was the 407-847-8562. And with that, there you have all the resources and available to you. Like, first of all, if it's an emergency, if it's physical, and you feel that your life is in danger, just call 911. You don't call none of this number. You don't call a friend. You don't call your mom. You call 911. And that's what needs to be done right away. Like if it's physical. If it's that you don't know yet, what are your resources? If you're in a real threat, like in a relationship that you think that it's abusive, then you can call the 1-800s and you can get additional information. And that's just it's the way we work. That's why actually the month of October was designated as the awareness month. It started in 1981 just as a day of unity, trying to connect advocates from throughout the states just to do what we do. And now we have the number, the national number. And it's easier for people to get assistance.
That's amazing. And that information that you gave is very helpful for if someone's going through that or if you know someone that's going through that. Those are numbers that you can give them. At the end of the day, something that you said that it is your choice and it is that person's choice. And that's something that I know is a back and forth battle between you loving someone or you seeing something from the outside. But at least you being aware and informed, I think will always help you to be able to help someone else too. So thank you so much for sharing your story. Bethsaida, I feel like it's so admirable to me how you've come and what you've been through, and now you're able to help others. That's amazing. But what is one last thing that you want to leave with someone either going through that or is in that place where they feel, that they've gone through that or are going through that right now?
That there is help out there. Don't stay silent. I think that's the worst. Like if you keep it to yourself, it won't help you at all. You need to talk to someone, speak out, talk to someone, look for help, but never, I'll say, don't stay silent. Is the, you won't, like in my case, I look for help. And I was able to go through the whole process with someone next to me. It can be spiritual guidance, it can be a counselor, it can be a friend, but don't stay by yourself. Like, don't keep it to yourself. Just talk about it and look for help. And the other thing is definitely God. You need God. Like, He's like everything, He'll be everything with you. Like, if you feel those nights that they're so dark and you feel so lonely and the sadness just invade you and you say, oh, I don't want to continue with this, that's when you need God. If you stay like silent, you won't get this whole like I will say holistic, because you can have a counselor, a pastor, everyone working for you and helping you and assisting you during that difficult time.
Yeah, that's so good. There's people that want to help you, and there is help, and that's the most important thing. So, thank you so much, Bethsaida, for sharing your story. It honestly has, I know, will impact and bring awareness to those people. So, thank you so much for being a part.
Thank you so much to you for having me and for letting me share my story.
Yes. Where can they find you, by the way? Do you have, how can people connect with you?
Okay, I can give my phone number, but also throughout the media like Facebook. I have my Facebook. I have Bethsaida, and it's Bethzaida Garcia, and also I have Instagram. Shoot me a messenger or anything, and I'll be available.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. It was a very important topic, and especially how this month is the Awareness Month, I thought it would be perfect to cover this. I really hope that if you hear something today that sparks either someone in your mind that is in one of those relationships, that you can send this to them. I know that sometimes you can talk to your friends, you can share your heart, you can tell them what to do, or you can try to tell them what to do, but at the end of the day, it is always their decision. But just knowing that there is help out there and that you're thinking about them, goes a long way. So send this to someone that needs it, share it, and don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and stay tuned for next week's episode.